Good afternoon, and again, welcome to Seeds. My name is Jesse McIntyre, and I am one of the technical facilitators for today's event. And we are about to begin. Just give us one moment as we get Miss Moira Shaughnessy on the line.
Hello, BBA. My name is Moira Shaughnessy. I'm a Senior Training and Development Officer in Human Capital Services in BBA. Welcome to the launch of the Skill Enhancement and Employee Development Series, or SEEDS, as we like to call it. These sessions will be offered twice per month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The goal is to give you the tips and tools you need to grow your career and improve your personal and professional effectiveness. The schedule of events can be found on our SharePoint site that's listed in this chat. You can also find it in the flyers we'll be sending out. These sessions are always recorded, and you can find those recordings on our SharePoint as well. So with that, let's begin with our topic today, crucial conversations. So here we are back from 2 years of 100% virtual work, where we've gotten into this habit of relying on email and IMs to build and maintain professional relationships. And that can be tough. You know, when we're communicating by emails, they often come across as neutral at best. You know, they can sound a little cold. And with email and IM, there's not a lot of back and forth. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we find ourselves at this point, our country, in this place where we're hearing a lot about the Great Resignation. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's time to come back to having conversation. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And not just any conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about crucial conversations. So let's talk about the objectives of this training today, what you're going to be leaving here with today. At the end of this session, my hope is that you'll know when you're going into a crucial conversation. You'll know suddenly when you find yourself in the middle of one that you might not quite have been prepared for. You'll know what a crucial conversation is. You're going to know how to prepare for a crucial conversation. And then you'll hear today about some strategies, some tools, some tips. What do you do in each phase of a crucial conversation? And then leaving here today, my hope is that you're able to have a crucial conversation in which both of you leave the conversation feeling motivated, engaged, and more connected than you were before you had the conversation. So the resource, the book. I have to tell you, I've been at VA now for, going on 7 years. I've been running leadership development programs here for about 6 years. And one of my roles here as program manager for first ELP and now lead is I have to have difficult conversations quite a bit. Folks are developing themselves into leaders. And if I see something that will get in the way of their effectiveness as a leader, if I see they're having an impact that they might not know they're having, I have to tell them. And often I'm the first because, you know, a lot of people don't want to have these really tough conversations. So I started off having to say tough things during this program. And at the end of our conversations, you know, the people in the program who I had that conversation with, they would leave, and I got the sense they were less engaged and not very motivated and not happy. They didn't go well. And that's when I learned that, this is a real art, having a crucial conversation. So I got myself a notebook and I took notes after every conversation. It helped so much. What went well, what didn't, and I started learning really valuable lessons. So finally, after a while, what I found is, you can have these conversations and both of you can leave feeling like you're seen, you're understood, and both are motivated, both are engaged, and both are really connected once again. It started working. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have all these great lessons. Maybe I'll write a blog. Maybe I'll write a book. And then I came across this book called Crucial Conversations, and I realized it's all in there. I didn't have anything original to add. everything I saw that really worked, everything that was really powerful is in this book. It's called Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. And you can find it in our TMS. You go down to Skillsoft Books and it's there if you want it for free. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Right now we are going to start with, how do you know if you're in a crucial conversation? Not every conversation, you don't need these tools for every conversation you're going to be in. How do you know when you need extra, when winging it is no longer what you want to do? What the Crucial Conversations folks say is that if you know you're going into a conversation where there are opposing opinions and the stakes are kind of high, and when there are strong emotions present, that's when you're going to need to do something. You're going to need to do some prep. You're going to need to go through some steps in the middle of it and take extra care so that both of you are coming out more engaged at the end. All right. So first off, let's talk right now about, when do they happen? When are you likely to find yourself in the middle of a crucial conversation? If you have to give difficult feedback on someone's work, whether you're a leader or whether, sometimes as a quality person or even if you're talking to a peer and you have to say something other than "this was fantastic," probably going to be a crucial conversation. Explaining to a team member why you felt offended. If, you're in meetings with each other, or coming back after COVID, we're a little bit out of practice, communicating with one another, things are going to happen. Might be a crucial conversation. Talking to a veteran who's unhappy, giving an unfavorable performance review, saying that you disagree. Not easy. These situations, chances are, crucial conversation. Often you'll find in yourself, if you're putting off a conversation, you're saying to yourself, you know what, I don't really need to have this right now, maybe next week. Chances are it's a crucial conversation. You kind of know it, and you find yourself putting it off and kind of procrastinating. Chances are you're going into a crucial conversation. So let me ask you right now, because I want you to come out of this training with real skills you can use and some kind of outline you can use to have this conversation. So have something in mind right now. What is one conversation you need to have that you've been avoiding? It doesn't have to be at work. It can be at home. It can be with your spouse or a sibling, or maybe it is at work. Write that down right now. I'll give you like 20 seconds for that. So how do you begin? How do you prepare for something like this? I really want to give you the sense that this is not a time when it's good to wing it. This is not something like, oh, I'm so busy all day long, my conversation's at 1 o'clock, and you work up until 12:59 because it's a hard thing to think about this conversation. You really want to do some prep. You also don't want to go into this conversation kind of being surprised at some of the habits that you may bring with you as you come into this conversation. So here's my question for you right now. What is the most challenging part of a crucial conversation for you? So for example, if you're very, maybe you're very emotional, that could be, and you show up in these conversations very emotional. Maybe you show up and you have a hard time finding the words, and mostly you just kind of want to leave and let that other person really carry the conversation. All of us have these habits that we bring into these conversations. So take a moment and reflect on what is the most challenging part of a crucial conversation for you. Now, we're going to go on here to talk about DISC for a moment. Each of you shows up in a conversation. The person who you're talking to will show up in a particular way as well. And the way we all show up in these conversations is determined by our communication and collaboration styles. So what I want to talk to you right now about, just for a moment, this isn't a DISC training, I just want to talk to you a moment about DISC. It's a personality style assessment. We use it extensively in VBA. Many of you out there have taken this. This isn't a DISC training, but if we think about DISC for a moment, it gives us some good information about how we are likely to show up in these conversations. And, it won't surprise us when people show up in a very different way than we do. So what DISC tells us is there are basically 4 different styles of communication and collaboration. And when you get into these crucial conversations, you're going to notice them. And I want you to think about, when you look at these, how you yourself show up, and then also how your partner may show up. So in DISC, if you have a high dominant style, if you are a person with this particular personality style, chances are you come into these conversations very direct, very matter of fact. Your goal is to just get something done. You may power through things. You may find you might be blunt. People who are high dominant personality styles get to, they want to get to the finish line. They want to get something done. They may show up in this conversation in that way. If you're a high influence kind of person, you might be showing up in these crucial conversations very passionate, a little bit impulsive, kind of emotional. It's very important in this conversation for you to express all of the things, which can go over, which sometimes doesn't go over well. If you're a high I, chances are you're showing up in these crucial conversations very expressive and kind of emotional. If you're a high S, high supportiveness style, chances are you do not want to have this crucial conversation because conflict is especially hard for you. So when you get into these conversations, you might find yourself disappearing. You might find yourself having a hard time discovering your own voice. Now, if you're a high conscientiousness kind of person, what you're really focused on in these conversations is being very analytical, very logical. You want all the facts, right? All of these styles are useful, they're valuable, but you can imagine if different styles are showing up in a conversation, there might be a little bit of friction. So let me ask you, as you look at this slide, you might know DISC, you might not, but where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as the very rational, cool, collected one? Do you see yourself as a little bit aggressive, a little bit very direct? Do you see yourself as very emotional, very expressive, or maybe you see yourself as when it comes to fight, flight, freeze, or appease, maybe you're the one who wants to appease, and because of that, you leave conversations not expressing everything you need to. So these things are really, this kind of self-awareness is really important as you go into this conversation. This kind of social awareness is a very important thing as you go into this conversation, because you want to know how people are showing up, and it might be very different than what you expect. None of these is the right way. None of these is the wrong way. These are just, we're wired differently, and that's what we have to work with when we go into these conversations. So preparing. How do you prepare for this? Especially if things are going to be emotional, or if, the conversation may go where you're not expecting. What you really want to know before you go in is, what is the objective? At the end of the day, what is your objective for this conversation? And so often we go into these conversations wanting to be right or wanting to make the other person understand us, but we are here to serve veterans. We are here to offer services and products that serve veterans. So at the end, how is this conversation going to allow you to be in service the best possible way you can? At the end of this conversation, what needs to happen so that we can be in service in a more powerful way? You might lose sight of that in the middle of these conversations. So when you're preparing, good to know that before you go in. You also want to have access to data and information at your fingertips. You want to have it at hand. So, during these conversations, if you ever hear words like always or never, or, What do you mean? You want to be able to have information there that you can turn to keep things very neutral and very grounded. Have all the data at hand, know why you're having the conversation. And then I would also recommend starting the converse, like you don't want to script out your conversation, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to, but you do want to know how you're going to start the conversation. Here's some examples that are on this screen. I'm concerned about this and want to discuss it with you. I'm curious about your perspective on X, Y, Z. I'd like to talk it over with you. I noticed this. Can you tell me about it? What you can see from each of these is a way of starting the conversation. You're setting the tone and you're letting the person know, look, I'm here for the conversation. I'm not here to give you a bunch of information and have you, do everything that I say. You're inviting the person into this dance of a conversation, and you're making it very clear that this is what you're approaching with, and you want to hear back from them, and you want to make it clear that you're willing to listen and you're willing to have this be a back and forth conversation. When you start off like this, you're setting the tone. Here's what I have, and I'm interested in knowing what you have too. So in this conversation that you indicated that you wrote down, this conversation that you want to have, I'm curious now, given you need to have this conversation, what's your objective? Why do you need to have it? And how are you going to start it? So why you need to have it, why you need to have it is not like, because this person really needs to understand A, B, and C. Why do they need to understand A, B, and C? What is your ask under the complaint that you have? What's the powerful ask here? I want you to identify that right now. What's your powerful ask? Why have this conversation? And then how are you going to start the conversation? I'm going to give you about a minute just to get down a few of your thoughts. So now, you identified conversation what you want to have, and maybe just a sentence to open up that conversation to set the tone. Now we're going to go on to our next objective, implement strategies for each phase of a crucial conversation. And now what you'll see on this next slide, start with heart, be trustworthy. This is right out of the book. And on our SharePoint site that is shared above, we are going to have this job aid handy. So you can print this out, have it available. It's kind of a book. That book, it's a one-page outline basically of that book, and we're gonna go through step by step. The first thing they say in that book is start with heart. Step one, start with heart, be trustworthy. So what that means basically is kind of what Daniel Goldman told us almost 30 years ago when he wrote that book, Emotional Intelligence. We need to start with compassion, some kind of empathy. In this book, they call it starting with heart. It is essential. Those of you who have access to toddlers or children know when they have a temper tantrum, if you can have some sort of empathy, some sort of compassion, and think to yourself, yeah, I understand, they need a nap. Okay, you put them in the corner, you give them some grapes and a book. Okay, and you get to keep your wits about you because you are filled with compassion for that child. You know what to do, how to do it, and you stay centered and compassionate, and that kid feels it and you feel it as well. There is something very powerful when you start with compassion. It also kind of if you're feeling emotional and if you can like tune into compassion, it will soothe your nervous system. And by compassion, I don't mean being nice, because sometimes compassionately, when you have to say something really tough to someone and you can say it with a great deal of compassion, they feel it. It's powerful. You have impact there. You have influence when you can deliver this kind of information with some kind of compassion. Here in Crucial Conversations, they say start with heart, and they say ask yourself these questions. How can I be of service? This will help you get to that compassion. What's my best intention for the both of us? What do I not want to happen for the both of us? You can be in service and really think about what you want for the other person as well. It's powerful. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll even put, the picture of a heart in the corner of the paper. That way, when it goes south, I see that heart and I remember, as a leader in my programs, I am here to be of service to these folks. Remember that when things go south, I'm here to be of service, and that heart reminds me of that. Come back to that compassion come back to that heart again and again and again, regardless of who you're talking to. It can set you straight. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one. What the book tells us here is learn to look. And what does that mean? It means, first, I would say we always start with ourselves. We start with self-awareness. Learn to recognize the signs that you yourself are going into fight, flight, freeze, or appease. So I know for myself, when I start hearing my voice being raised, I know it's time to start breathing more. Does it work all the time? No, but I know, I know when my voice is being raised, slow down breathing. We learn to look for signs that we are not showing up at our best in these conversations. Then we look for signs that that other person in front of us is not at their best. They're not feeling safe. You need to look for that. Learn to look for that. Look for neutral ground. I remember once when I was running a leadership program, I was working with a team. They were in the back of the room. One team member, I could hear his voice being raised. I could see him pointing at his team members in a very animated way. It was very clear to me. It looked like he was very angry and letting his teammates know about that. So at the break, my job had to have these crucial conversations. I go over and I say, this is what I saw. I saw some finger pointing. I heard your voice being raised. Can you tell me about that? And he was very, very emotional and said, this project's very important to me, and we're wasting our time. We're not getting talking about the most important stuff here. We're going to miss our deadline, and this project's going to go south. Very upset. And so in looking for neutral ground and seeing, he's showing up with a lot of emotion there, I said, it sounds as though you're really concerned about your timeline. You're concerned you're not going to finish on time with a great project. Do I have that right? And his shoulders just kind of went down. He's like, well, yeah, that's it. And, we're going to get to the end of this program. We need to have this project done. And they're going around in circles. And I said, well, what do you want? If your goal is to finish powerfully with a great project, what do you want to talk to your team about? He said, I don't know, like milestones. I said, yeah, milestones. What a great thing to talk about. You're going to go back. You're going to, say, I'm really concerned about our deadlines. Can we talk about milestones? Does that sound right? Yes, it does. What's your next step? And he said, I'm going to go apologize to the team, I guess. And that's when I really understood the power of finding neutral ground underneath all of the emotion. What is the neutral ground that both of you are concerned about? Both of us were concerned about him doing well in this program and that team producing a project that they were proud of. That's learning to looking for neutral ground, looking for signs that someone doesn't feel safe, and one of those signs is somebody getting loud, and watching your own emotional response. What I want you to do right now is, and Jesse, I'm going to have to rely on you for this. So please put in the chat box, what are signs that you're talking to someone? This is, again, we're talking about learn to look. What are some signs that people don't feel safe when you're talking to them in a crucial conversation? How do you know? You're having this conversation, something's going south, and not happening the way I wanted it to happen. How do you know someone's not feeling safe? And Jesse, if you could let me know what you see, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so there are a lot of body language, specifically arms being crossed, won't make eye contact, some facial expressions, eyes looking towards the door, they stop responding, leaning away, physically shrinking back.
Yeah, these are great. You know it. Well, often when you're in the middle of these conversations, if you've got your fight, flight, or freeze or appease kind of revved up, if your nervous system's revved up, your limbic system is active, you are no longer thinking in a very logical way. These signs that you're talking about are easy to miss because your nervous system is really activated. So if you can somehow see, wow, someone is looking away, arms crossed, looking at the door. Suddenly they're quiet. Suddenly they're yelling. Suddenly blah, blah, blah. That's when you know it's time to take some action. It's time to make it safe. And that's our next step that we're going to talk about right now. What are some things you can do to make it safe? So you want to make it safe for yourself first. It's kind of like put your own oxygen mask on first, and then you take signs to make it safe for another. So to make it safe for yourself, easiest thing to do is slow down your breathing to like maybe 5 breaths a minute. You can even practice that right now. Feet on the ground, breathe in, breathe out. Suddenly you have access to compassion again. Suddenly you can see the person in front of you, and understand what goals they have. Suddenly you can listen again. First, you make it safe for yourself. You breathe, you relax, and you adjust your tone. And you can hear your own tone. That helps you. They can hear your tone. They can see that that you care. There's an author, Marjorie Eastman, veteran Bronze Star recipient, wrote a book called First Line Generation. And what she said as a leader, what she learned is you don't have to like someone, but you do have to care. And people need to know that you care. And so when you make it safe for someone and you kind of step back and, you adjust your own breathing and you start listening, mirroring, paraphrasing, reframing what you hear, that makes them feel safe as well. Safety is everything. All sorts of research out there saying that the highest performing teams, what they all have in common, and a lot of research out there that supports this, is that there is psychological safety. Aristotle research looked at Google teams, and that was like one of the first research that came out. They couldn't believe it. They thought, oh, maybe it's the teams with more experience who've been together longer or have education. Or it wasn't that. It was psychological safety. So it's essential. So on your team, with your colleagues, how do you build safety? First, you create it in yourself, and then you start listening. Mirroring and paraphrasing is things like phrases like, so are you saying that? Or what I'm hearing is anything you can do to give the person the understanding that you heard what they said and it matters to you. And I've seen it again and again and again. It's very disarming. And it even buys you some time if you're getting, kind of frustrated yourself. If you can say something like, so what I hear you saying is you're really frustrated about ABC. You can see the effect that has on the person in front of you, or hear it in their voice. You hear a big sigh, you hear them slow down, you hear the quality of their voice changing. Just paraphrasing. So what you're saying is reframing what you're hearing. And I gave you an example of that earlier. So when that person said, I'm upset about all the things. And so if you can reframe that to, I'm hearing what you want is, this very neutral, great thing. You really want to produce this amazing project. That's you really want to get ahead in your career. You really want to, be engaged again at work. I'm hearing that. Do I have that right? Very powerful, really builds in safety. What's one way with this conversation you're going to have? One thing you can do when you see someone, you recognize someone's kind of getting agitated, someone's disappearing, someone has those, looking at the door, arms crossed. What's one thing, because of what we just talked about here, that you can do?
Some responses that are coming in are listen to understand, ask them what they think, stop talking and ask if everything is okay, adjust your tone, ask for input, reframing, practicing active listening.
You got it. Easier said than done, something to practice. And if this is hard, what I would suggest is having, like, this is a new, like, if you are one who prefers to express in the middle of a conversation and your goal is to listen more, you need a cue to remind you. If you want to build in this habit of stopping and listening, you need a cue. What would that be? Is it a picture of somebody? Is it a word that you want to look at? You need a cue so that you stop and listen. And that's it's hard to change habits. That might even bring up some feelings of anxiety, anxiousness. You feel like you need to say more. When you can look at that cue, take a step back, take a breath, take a beat, and really try to listen to understand instead of listening to communicate, that's going to have a profound impact on that conversation. We're going to talk about mastering stories now. I remember once there were two people in one of my programs working together, and there was a fallout, and I heard about it after. And I talked to the first person, and they said, Mara, my whole life, I've never been assertive enough, and I had this opportunity, and I took it. So what happened, they were working on a project. There was an opportunity to talk to a senior executive. There wasn't enough time to, let the whole team know. This lady saw the opportunity to go talk to the senior executive. She didn't want to, but the story she was telling herself was, look, my whole life I've been too passive, and I want to be bold, and I want to take action on, and I want to be able to give this to my team, this great information I can get from the senior executive. There's not enough time to ask him about it. I'm going to move forward boldly and talk to this senior executive, even though I'm really nervous about it. That did not go well because one of her teammates found out about that and said, you know what, Mara, my whole life people have been stepping over me and not including me, and it's disrespectful. And for once, I'm not going to take that anymore. And I'm going to let them, and I wanted to let them know that and stand up for myself, because my whole life I have been one who gets stepped on. I won't have it. And so you can imagine what that was like going into this. They had a crucial conversation on the spot, and their stories were competing with one another, and they didn't understand what the stories were. In my program, I always say, assume a noble story. Assume that person is acting from a noble place. They're trying to grow something or do something. They're not there to be disrespectful. And so we had to have a talk about that. And by the time I found out about this, one person was on their way home from work. So as you know, like, these conversations that we have can really impact, really impact production, really impact, one of those persons missed a day of work because of that. These things matter. It's really important to know the stories, theirs and yours, that are being activated in this situation. So one of the things that I find very useful, if I do have one of these stories, is like actually using that phrase. It's on your cheat sheet there, and that is, the story I'm telling myself is. Asking yourself, what is the assumption I'm making here about the other person? We tend to project our past onto the present all the time, even though we say we're not going to do it. We do it all the time. If you have been in situations many, many times where this story was very active, you're going to project that onto your present situation. So you really need to step back and say, is that true? Like, what? I'm assuming this is going on. Is it? When you're in the middle of these conversations, what are your assumptions? You might even want to jot that down. What's my assumption right now? Things are really going south. And then getting curious, not judgmental. Wow. Boy, is that an easy sentence to type out, but hard to do. Launching from a place of curiosity instead of judgment. This is right. That's wrong. They're wrong. This is right. The conversation's going to go south immediately if you find yourself in that place. But if you can somehow manage to be curious, why is this going on? What does this person really want? makes a huge difference. Okay, and then the last one, moving to action. Move to action. So you've had this conversation. You went in. You started getting really aware of when you're at your best and when you're not. How to make make that conversation safe for yourself, safe for the other person. You're continuing to look and hear your partner and say, is this person safe? Are they continuing to feel like they can really talk to me? Do they feel safe enough to connect with me? Are they engaged? You're doing that. You're mastering stories. You're keeping an eye out for the story they might be telling themselves, and you're really aware of the stories you typically tell yourself. Then what do? Move to action. So what's the gap between the way things are to where you want them to be? So it's not enough at this point just to feel like you're on the same page. You got to move forward. We're in service here. What's the next step? The next step you'll get to if you think about the gap between where you started and where you want to be. So I'd write it down. I'd have that ready before I even went in. The word gap. Where are we? What's the gap? Are we there yet? Are we at a place where we know what the next steps are? And asking, what do you think we should do next, is a very respectful way to end this conversation, and powerful as well. So, as you those of you who have access to children know, like if you just say, oh, it's so important to clean your room and do all the things, and you give them a lot of instructions and tell them about why everything is important, they're probably going to stop listening pretty quickly. But if you can ask them questions, well, what do you think we should do next? Pull the information out. In this conversation that you're having with this person, it's so much more powerful to end the conversation trying to get to the point where you hear what you want to happen next come out of their mouth. So what do you think we should do next here? It's much like, that story I told in the beginning. I didn't tell that person, you need to go out and apologize because that was wrong. That would have created I would have lost some credibility with that one. So if I could get him to come to that conclusion on his own, he's more likely to take action on it. So me saying, what do you think we should do next here? Spotlight some kind of positive movement here. That can have a big impact. What should we do next? Hopefully they say what you're thinking. And if they don't, then it's time to ask more questions so that you can pull out the next steps from your partner. So what you want is who, what, when, and how. And at work, wow, is it helpful to follow up with an email. I'm here with LEAP, a leadership development program that we offer here in the Leadership Development Division, and I'm listening to some really talented leaders speak this week. Just amazing stories coming out. And what one of our leaders, Mike Stevens out of Indianapolis, said is, look, if you're not following up, you're losing credibility there. Follow up. Say, okay, this is what we talked about, and you wanted this, and I'm wanting this. Follow up. Put it in the email. If you've come to an agreement and you've committed some action, do the actions. Follow up. And if you don't, it could mean you lose some credibility. So who, what, when, how? What are both of you going to do moving forward, and then doing them? Checking for buy-in. I do this at the end of every conversation I have with people in my program when I have to have these conversations. I check for their buy-in. Like, how did this go? This was a tough conversation. How are you feeling? I want them to leave feeling whole, respected, heard, seen. I also want them to take action, and we're clear about that. But also checking for buy-in. Is there anything else we need to cover here? So often I hear people say, Mara, we're so busy, we don't have time for that. I don't think you don't have time for not doing that, because if there is no buy-in, chances are and that person is engaged, chances are you're going to have to come back and revisit the same thing again, again, again. So how do we do? What do you think? Does this sound okay? Checking for buy-in, so essential. And then watching for aggression, passive aggression, and address. So aggression might be their voice is still raised, they're still animated, and if they're that emotional, what I've been hearing leaders say again and again, some really talented leaders we have here in VBA is like, you might have to reschedule, take a break, because if that person is that emotional, they're not really thinking logically, they're not problem solving anymore, they're not being creative anymore, and you've lost them. So take a break, give them a break, and then come back in. So watch for that, any kind of aggressive, that passive aggression. That could just mean like no more, like you've just lost them. There's just silence. And again, you might have to reschedule so that you can get back on the same page. So that's move to action. These slides are going to be up on our SharePoint site. What we have right here, powerful questions. I'm a leadership coach, and what I have found is a great way to have influence is to ask powerful questions. Here are some, when you go into these conversations, to draw out that other person. A great way to do that is to ask powerful questions. Here's some example. You can use these. You're going into these conversations. I would have some powerful questions already written out. Now, I have a notebook of questions that I use in my coaching. Before I go into a conversation, I think, what are some questions that are likely going to be really help this conversation? And I'll pinpoint some and write some down. And these are some examples of those. So we have a scenario. Here's the scenario. In a meeting, you try to suggest problems that could happen if your group moves forward in the direction they want. So basically, you're in a meeting. You want to warn folks. Hey, you know what? I saw this before, and it didn't work, and I have some concerns here. This needs to be addressed. A peer interrupts you regularly, and you feel disrespected. You feel as if you're always being cut off. You're never given the time you need to express your ideas. So here's my question to you all, based on everything you just heard in this training. What is one thing you're going to do differently when you get into these crucial conversations? In that scenario, say you're going into that scenario, you have to have a conversation with your peer. You're not feeling very respected. You're not feeling heard. You got to say, and you do have to talk about it, because if you're going into meetings and you're not adding to those meetings any longer, something needs to be addressed there. You want to have that conversation based on this training that you just went through. What's one thing you would do differently if you were in that situation? Take a moment, think about it, and write it in the chat. One thing you might do differently based on everything you just heard. Whether it be starting with heart, something around learning to look, something around making it safe for yourself and the other, something around addressing the stories that come out. What are you going to do that's different? I'd love to hear what comes out. And please type it in, because I think, I don't know how many we have online, but I'm assuming, Jesse, it might be too many for people to come off of mute. Do I have that right?
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah. So if you could type it, is anything being written in?
Of course. So a few of the responses are to say, what I hear you saying is ... Be more sympathetic and try active listening.
Yeah.
Give them a paper and pen and ask them to write down any concerns that you can address afterwards.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that one. I like it. Okay.
Prepare ahead of time with ideas about what my takeaway needs to be, and give myself a reminder to stay in compassion.
Yeah. And, I've talked about this in my programs before, and some of the feedback I got was, Mara, I thought compassion was weakness. I always thought it was kind of soft, like being nice, because you can't always be nice in the middle of this. And it's not. It's just trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, getting why it is they're showing up the way they're showing up. And wow, does that give you access to problem solving and creativity in that moment? I love that. Thank you. What's another one, Jesse?
Another one is ask the person or group to please hold all questions until the end, or we can speak after the meeting.
So hold all questions to the end. So I think if you have information that you need to give and you want to get all that information out, it's an okay thing to say. You know what? I'm just going to go through this, and then at the end, I really want to hear from you. But first, I'm going to go through and give this information. It's a fine thing to do, but you do want to let them know up front that I'm going to ask you at the end how this sits with you, because you want to make it clear, set the tone of the conversation so that they know this is not just going to be for them just receiving information. This is not going to be you telling them what to do. This is a dance. This is a conversation, a back and forth, and you're making it clear. When I'm done talking, I really want to hear, what your response is. Yeah, great. Thank you. What's another one?
So another one is figure out why this person is always interrupting. And
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, alongside of that, which I think kind of goes hand in hand, is pause, take a breath, and not reply impulsively.
Yeah, hard to do, but yeah, and that very first thing that you just said, Jesse, is like try to figure out why they are interrupting. Why I like that so much is what you're talking about there is respond with curiosity, not because if someone's doing that to me a lot, I don't know about you, I get a little judgy. I get a little self-righteous. Yeah, interruption is not right. They should stop doing that, and that can, be irritating, and you get kind of judgy. And what you're talking about is taking a step back, saying, why are they doing that? Do they not feel heard? Are they, what's that about? Responding with that kind of curiosity, that conversation's going to go a lot better than if, internally we're getting up on our soapbox saying they're wrong and they need to act a different way. Responding with that kind of curiosity, just brilliant. What was the second thing, Jesse?
The second thing was to take a deep breath and respond without impulsivity.
Yeah, you're going to get impulsive when your nervous system's activated, fight, flight, or freeze. Especially if you're a high influence kind of person, more likely to be impulsive. So if you want to deactivate your nervous system, taking that deep breath, it's like it works like a charm. It's just biology. It literally activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which means you slow down, your heart rate slows down, and you can then think. You find your words. You think creatively. You then really know how to reach back out and connect with that person, which is the whole goal of a crucial conversation. Allows you to do that. Brilliant, brilliant. Anything else, Jesse?
Yeah, just a couple more. One of them is if the person is responding in a negative way, ask them to provide a solution.
Yeah, I like that. So, and it's also very respectful to the person you're talking with too. It's like, I'd love to hear, what's your solution? What are steps you think we should take right now? May not be the steps you need to take, but you're signaling to them that I really do want to hear. What are they? They sound good, but you cannot take those steps. Like, well, I want 3 days off in the middle of our busiest season. May not be able to do that, but if you ask them, what is what you're really asking for here? What's the solution to this? And they say something that you can't do. Coming back with, I wish we could do that, and maybe next time, maybe when things slow down a little, I wish we could do that. But getting that out of them, so important. Getting those solutions out. What do you think we should do? Very respectful to your partner. Love it.
And then one final one, which I think is just funny and very true. Don't have caffeine before the crucial conversation.
I had never thought about that. Oh, wouldn't that be a great study? what's the effect of caffeine on crucial conversations? That's hilarious, first of all. But secondly, because how well this conversation goes often depends on how fired up we are. If we're fired up, we're leaving or we're staying and getting aggressive or we're appeasing or whatever. Does caffeine affect that? I just find that very curious. I mean, funny, but also very curious. I love it. All right. Oh, we are almost at time. We're at 57 past the hour. Jesse, could you go to the QR code? This is the first in this series, and we take your feedback very, very seriously. Please, this is a QR code. You got a phone, you just open up your camera, put your camera up to that code, and a little, link will pop up. Click on the link. It's just 6 questions. Let us know how this went for you. Makes a huge difference. We'd be so appreciative of that. Thank you so much for showing up to this first session of the Seed series. We'll have more. We have some phenomenal speakers lined up. We have topics that get requested again and again. So we put together all our greatest hits, all our most requested trainings. They're coming up in the next few months. Again, please check out our SharePoint site. That's our schedule changes as our speakers become available. So please go out on our SharePoint site to see the most updated information. You will see the TMS number there, so you can get credit for this training. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you all for being here today.